Hey everyone, welcome to my first recap of the 2026 Naroditsky Memorial Rapid and Blitz Tournament. Today I wanted to show you three of my favorite games that took place in the Rapid segment of the tournament. So yeah, let's just jump right in. So this first game I have is Semen Kanin versus Wesley So, and let's just jump right in. So Semen opens with 1d4, Wesley replies d5, c4, c6, the Slav defense. And here, Semen decides to take on d5, e takes d5, entering the exchange soft defense. Now, this opening is known to be slightly boring and positional. However, if it's played the right way and misplayed slightly by black, it can be an extremely dangerous weapon, especially since white is extremely solid and has very chances to lose this position. So we have bishop f4 opted by Semen. Then we have knight c6, e3, and bishop f5. Now, bishop f5 is not the most common move in the position. Many masters play knight f6, followed by bishop f5, e6, and queen c8, defending this b7 pawn. And the reason they do this, as you'll see in this game, is b7 tends to be a very weak point in the position. And if white gets his b7 pawn and puts some pressure on it, it can lead to an extremely unpleasant position for black. So going back to the game, after bishop f5, white played queen b3, immediately going after this b7 square, and you can see it's quite tough to defend this for black because you can't use the rook because of this beautiful bishop. You can't, and if you use the queen, say you play queen d7 like happens in the game, then d5 is also another weakness that you need to look out for, and it's already extremely tough to defend this position for black because of all the glaring weaknesses. So Wesley plays e6, knight f3, and now f6. Now, why doesn't Wesley just play a move like bishop d6? Well, it's because after take, and queen takes b7, again, you can see this weakness of the b7 pawn, which isn't letting black develop any of his pieces. And for example, if Wesley just tries to play a move like knight f6, white can immediately jump this knight into e5. And the point is, if black ever takes, you can just take back. If the knight moves, you have this move bishop b5, pinning the queen to the king, and the game is essentially over. So going back, after f6, just designed to stop this knight to getting to e5. White plays this move bishop b5, just pinning the knight to the queen and then to the king. After rook c8, castle, and a6, white just takes, and after queen takes c6, plays this move rook c1. And as you can see in this position, white is very much ahead in development, has almost all of their pieces into the game, is properly castled, king is tucked away nice and safe, while black has only the queen side developed, none of the king side pieces are developed, and will need at least 2 to 3 moves just to castle. And during this time, white can use to attack this black king, win a few tempi, or try to win material on the queen side and push these pawns to win the game. So let's see what happens. So black plays b5 in this position, which is given as a mistake by the computer. I think the reason Wesley decided to play b5 and not develop some of the king side pieces such as knight e7 or to play bishop d6 is most likely after b5 he thought that he could create some type of counterplay on the queen side, and if he can lock this queen side up and cause white not to have enough play on the queen side, he can maybe hold his position to a draw and even win this in the long run, especially since it's rapid. But here, Kanin finds the brilliant move e4, and followed by knight takes b5. So why should white play e4 immediately and not just take on b5? So the main reason is if you just take on b5 immediately, black can just take queen takes c1 and black just wins because of checkmate. So e4 is designed not to open the center or anything else. It's to open up the bishop to defend this rook on c1. So now once Wesley takes on e4, white takes on b5, and now this is impossible because now the bishop can defend and take on c1, and this position is obviously completely winning for white. So let's go back. So after knight b5, what ends up happening in the game is this move queen d7, but this is a little too slow, and this position is already quite lost from black's side because after you take on c8, queen takes c8, and rook c1, this position is quite bad because you are nowhere near castling. And this king is just really weak, and white has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attacking pieces, while black only essentially has this one defender and as the queen on c8. And that piece is quite weak right now. So after queen d7, we have knight c7, king e6, and again Kanin plays knight h4, and then takes on f5, and now he plays this brilliant move, knight takes e6. Now, knight takes e6 just essentially wins the game. But Wesley couldn't have really stopped that, because even if he tries playing a move like bishop g4, preserving his bishop, trying to defend e6, white can just play h3. And in this position, if black goes back, white can play the same tactic, knight takes e6, and we will see why this works in the future. But it's extremely hard to see this move, first and foremost, but also it's extremely hard to prevent it. But after knight c7, knight h4, knight takes f5, and knight e6, the point is that if black takes the knight, like what happens in the game, white can play rook c7, and if, say, the knight blocks, which happens in the game, white can play this move d5. And the point of this move is that you're getting this pawn to d6 no matter what, and you're going to get it with a discovered check. And once you get this pawn to d6, you're either threatening to win the knight on e7, or you're even threatening to push this pawn to d7 and just make a new queen. For example, what happens in the game is queen g4, d6, king g6, and g3. This very patient move. And what it accomplishes is that you just don't want to blunder back rank mate if you ever move the queen. And black is essentially in zugzwang. They have no good moves. In this position, Wesley tries to play e3, but after just d takes e7, this bishop is trapped. White's going to be up a piece. This black king is extremely weak, and Wesley just throws in the towel. But after this knight takes e6 move, if black tries to play, for example, bishop e7, this nice shot d5 again just traps the queen. So you can see this queen is really short on squares, and it's the only real defender for black, but now it's even going to be lost. So after knight takes e6 and rook c7, this game is essentially over, because you're either going to lose this queen, or you're going to lose a piece, or in the long run, you're just going to get checkmated. So let's go on to the next game. So you guys may have seen the result, but it's okay. So this game is between Darius Sweerts and Sindarov. And Sindarov has been on a nasty tear lately. He's been playing really, really well, as you all know. He's probably the World Chess Championship challenger. So let's see. So we have e4, e5, and Sindarov plays into this Ruy Lopez. And this line is really interesting because in the top level, it's very knowledgeable. There's a lot of games that are played in this line, and let's just see what happens. So we have this move bishop a4, and now this move d6 by Sindarov, the Steinitz variation. And this move is known to be pretty solid, but it also leads to a lot of different structures, and it can be quite potent for white and for both pieces actually, because black gets a lot of counterattacking play on the king side, while white gets to play against this very slow d6 by striking the center quite quickly. So here Sweerts opts for this move castle, bishop d7, and now c4. c4 aims to go for a more of a Maroczy bind structure, as you can get from Sicilian defense. And in this position, Sindarov plays this move g6, opting for a fianchetto, playing knight e7, castle, and maybe going for this f5 move in the future. So here, Sweerts plays knight c3, bishop g7, taking on c6, and play this move d4. Now we're transposing more into a Sicilian type structure, where obviously the c pawn for black hasn't been exchanged off. So here Sindarov opts to take on d4, knight takes d4, and c5, trying to open this bishop. And as you can see, this bishop has almost unparalleled power on this diagonal. It's essentially attacking 1, 2, 3, 4 white pieces on the queen side, and it can be a thorn in black's position. So white plays knight f3, knight e7. The reason black plays knight e7 and not knight f6 is because you don't want to block this beautiful bishop, as I've mentioned. It plays a beautiful role in this position, just trying to attack b2, c3, and it limits movement on the queen side. So black plays knight e7, we have bishop f4, and we have this move f6. So now why f6? Well, f6 is designed to prevent this move e5. So say white black castles, white can play this move e5 right now. And now this position is not so clear because if black ever takes, you can just take on e5 with the bishop and say you play this move bishop c6. It can lead to a position where black has the more powerful pieces, has the more powerful bishops. However, it also leads to a position where black has these isolated queen pawns on the queen side. And these weaknesses are quite bad, and these can lead to a lot of counterplay for white. And in an endgame, most likely these weaknesses would not be enough to defend the position. So this is why Sindarov opts for this nice move f6, just preventing this e5 break and keeping this position under control for right now. So after queen d2 and now this move g5. So f6 was a dual move. It wasn't only preventing e5, it was so that if white plays queen d2 to ever go bishop h6 and trade the bishops, black can play this move g5. And even though this bishop may not look so good right now, black can always play h6 and f5 and open this bishop once again, re-entering it into the game. So after bishop e3 and castles, Sweerts plays this move knight e1, and knight e1 has a few different ideas. So number one, white wants to play knight d3 and maybe get some extra support for this pawn break on b4, but also it opens this pawn break of f4, and the knight's also much better placed on d3 as it's not obstructing this rook, this pawn, and white enjoys a small advantage in this position. So Sindarov plays bishop e6, attacking the pawn on c4. White just defends it, and after knight g6, Sindarov's main idea is to plant this knight on e5, maybe play g4, h5, and attack Sweerts' king on the king side. So after rook c1, h6, and f4, this is where the game really begins, because this is where the counterattacking really starts for both sides. So here Sindarov plays this move f5, and the point is that you don't want white to get this move f5, because then it would really constrict your bishop on e6 and your knight on g6, and it would just lead to an extremely unpleasant position for the black pieces. So after f5, you can see this bishop's diagonals once get reopened, and the point is, this may look like a pawn sacrifice, but it really isn't, because after you take on g5, there's this move f4, and the main point of this move is that if white ever takes on f4, you can just take back with the knight, and once rook takes f4, queen takes g5, and even though white's up a pawn in this position, this is a really terrible position because your knights are extremely out of play. They have no real weaknesses to attack because yes, there's this pawn a6 that's the weakness. However, you can't really attack in this position without wasting significant amount of time. And these bishops on e6 and g7 can create a deadly 1-2 duo attacking this black king. So let's go back. So this is why Sweert doesn't take on g5. He deems it as too risky, which makes sense, especially since he only has 57 seconds left in the game. So we have ef5, gf4, and now this is where the game becomes really spicy. So in this position, white can't take either of these pieces because, for example, if white plays f takes e6, black can play f takes e3, and white cannot take this pawn e3 because of bishop d4 in this pin. And if white just plays a move like queen e2, black can just play bishop f4, knight f4, queen g5, and this is a really bad position for white as they're so constricted due to this bishop and pawn duo. So after taking on f4, we have bishop takes f4, rook takes f5, and knight d3. So after knight d3, you can see that this position is very, very complicated. The pawns are not symmetric, and the real dynamic of the position is that if black can checkmate the white king or not. Because if black can checkmate the white king, then the game will obviously be over. But if white can hang on for a bit longer, then the endgame most likely would be good for white because of these weakened pawns. So after queen f6, knight e2, rook f8, rook a f8. So black creates a triple battery on the f file, putting immense pressure on this bishop. So we have this move rook e1, bishop d7, queen c1, And Suarez right now is just kind of just playing maneuvering moves, just moving back and forth because he has 7 seconds and he just doesn't want to risk the position. And Queen C1 also has to design another effect. It's to guard this rook on F1 so that if white plays bishop G3, bishop E3, bishop D2, getting the bishop out of harm's way, there wouldn't be a checkmate threat on F1. For example, in this position, if you play bishop E3, black can just play take, and it's checkmate. So the designed effect of Queen C1 is to defend this rook on F1. So we have this nice move, bishop C6, just rerouting this bishop to a much better diagonal for Sundarov. And after this move, bishop G3, he finds this really nice move, H5, just trying to dislodge this bishop from this G3 square. And later in the future, if he gets H4, maybe he can even play H3, which would really show the power of this bishop because you can open up this diagonal and it causes the light squares around white's king to be extremely weak. So we have this move H3, trying to stop black's push of H3, but black just moves H4, bishop H2, and now this move Queen F7. Queen F7 is given and is an inaccuracy by the computer because Sundarov missed this move bishop E4, and bishop E4, what it does is that it just traps a knight. And you might be like, okay, but what about knight F4? But after knight F4, there's this move bishop H6, and this knight is essentially dead. Because if you play this move Queen E3, just trying to counterattack the bishop, you can just take. Because again, remember how when the queen was on C1, it was supposed to guard the rook at F1? Well, now it's not anymore. And you have this nice move knight H3, and you're gonna win this rook, and it's most likely gonna be checkmate in just a few moves. So Sundarov misses his move bishop E4, but it's not the biggest deal because his opponent just has 11 seconds and his position is really easy to play in general. So here, Suarez blunders and plays this move knight F4, getting into harm's way with bishop H6. And after knight takes G6, you can just take. And this was the final trick by Suarez because he was hoping for, if Sundarov takes on F1, he can take this rook, but even here, there's just queen takes G6. But he was hoping for this, for taking the rook and then knight E7, which would be a fork. But obviously, Sundarov has enough time and is not going to fall for these cheeky tricks. And we can move on to the next game. So in this game, it's Fabiano Caruana versus Robert Kvaratskhelia. And it opens with 1c4, e6, and g3. Going for a very slow, very positional Catalan system in the English. So after d5, you can play bishop g2, d takes c4, queen to a4, just winning this pawn back. After knight b d7, queen takes c4, knight f6. This position has been seen many, many times over the years, and it often favors white just slightly, but if black knows what they're doing, it should be a relatively smooth sailing game. So white plays queen c2, c5, taking some space in the center, knight c3, bishop e7, just developing, getting ready to castle, knight f3, and now this move e5. Now this e5 move is extremely interesting because normally in these kind of positions, black doesn't play e5 because it often weakens the light squares around black's king a lot. But if black can play this move e4 in the future, it can cause a lot of trouble for the white pieces because once this pawn is on e4, it dislodges this knight on f3, it blocks his bishop on g2, and it causes a lot of pieces in white's camp to be bad. But this is kind of the drawback because you are weakening this square on f5. So white just plays castle, black plays castle, we have d3, rook b8, preparing this move b5 and getting off of this bishop's diagonal. And here we have this move knight to h4. And this is what I was talking about, just getting to this juicy f5 square. Because in a lot of positions, when a white knight gets on f5 or a black knight gets on f4, these knights are not 3-point pieces. They're normally worth a lot more, for example, 5 or 6 points. But we have this b5 move, knight to f5, bishop b7, and after bishop b7, offering this trade of bishops, this position looks really good for black. However, it's not because of these weaknesses, and now you are offering a light squared bishop trade when you're going to have prevalent light squared weaknesses for black. So after bishop g5, bishop takes g2, king takes g2, a6, and a4. So this a4 move is a very common idea, and its main point is to undermine the black structure, trying to open the a file, get in with your rooks, and just have a nice active game as white. And for example, black can't take on a4 because once rook takes a4, this pawn on a6 will be a target forever, and white can just play rook a1 and just take on a6, and white will just be up a pawn. So here, the best move in this position would have been b4, closing the position. Now, it's quite hard to play this because you're moving your pawns onto dark squares, and you have a dark squared bishop, which leaves your light squares extremely undefended, but this was the best practical try for Robbie. So after ab5, and rook a7, white enjoys a nice advantage because they just have the more active pieces, the more well-placed pieces, and they have good attacking capabilities in the future. So after this move h6, white plays bishop h4, which is given as a mistake. Here, what black can't play g5 because you can just play knight h6, and you can take on g5, and this bishop isn't really trapped, and it probably won't be. White just has to be a little bit careful, but they can always trade on f6 if they're ever afraid of getting the bishop trapped. So here, Robbie plays this move b4, but this move allows knight e4, and this puts pressure on a pinned piece. And the reason why this is pinned is that if the knight ever takes on e4, white can just take on e7, and you take on e7 with check, which is the important part, because now black needs to react to the threat. So if black ever takes on e7, you can just play take, take, and take, and you're up the exchange. And if you just move the king, then you can just play knight g6, which just wins the queen because it's a discover check on the queen. So take on e4 is impossible. Now there's immense pressure on this f6 knight, this d7 knight, this g7 pawn, h6 pawn, bishop on e7, queen on d8. They're all under fire. And you can see this come to a play once black plays this move bishop to f8, which allows this beautiful shot by Fabiano Caruana, knight takes h6. And this pawn on g7 here is what we call overloaded in chess. It's trying to guard this pawn, knight on f6 and this pawn on h6. And Fabi notices that and takes this pawn on h6 because once black takes on h6, you can once again play this brilliant move, rook takes d7. And the point is, if you ever take on d7 with the queen, you can play knight f6, which is a fork of the king, queen, and rook. But you'll obviously take the queen, and you'll be up a queen for the rest of the game, and you'll most likely win this position. But after rook d7, for example, if you take on d7 with the knight, you're again losing your queen. And this position is a little difficult for white to win because black has a lot of material for the queen. But in the long run, due to this pawn in f7 being weak and the black king being weak in general, white should be able to maneuver the pieces to the queen's side and get in and attack this black king and eventually win the game. So after knight h6, this game is essentially over. And what happens in the game is that black decides to lose the queen this way, as it would be a little bit challenging for Fabi to win this game, but he makes it look quite easy after this move g4. And the point is, you just want to play h4, king g3, and g5, and you're just getting all the play you want on this king side due to these weak pawns. So after b3, queen c3, bishop g7, and rook a1, now we're implementing the other idea of this position, which is getting in on the queen side and just infiltrating this position. And black can't do much because they've created this weakness on b3, they've created the weakness on c5 and e5 and f7 and h6. So they need to play defense the entire game and just hope nothing falls apart. So after knight f8, rook a3, and you might be wondering, why did Fabi just take on c5? Well, the reason is most likely is just taking the pawn on b3 is worth it more. Also, because this weakness isn't going anywhere. White can attack it any time of the day, but taking on b3 would be more important because this pawn is much closer to queening. So after knight e6 and e3, Robbie just resigns in this position because, well, he doesn't have any counterplay for the lost queen. And this move e3 is designed to stop the knight going to f4, stop going to d4. And this is a crushing game by Fabiano Caruana, who has 2 out of 2 at this point. and we'll see how the rest of the tournament goes for him. Alright, thank you for watching this recap with me. Thank you. Bye-bye.